At over 10,000 meters above ground, the cabin dimmed. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, and panicked screams echoed throughout the aircraft. This wasn't a scene from a disaster movie. It was a terrifying reality for passengers aboard Spring Airlines Japan flight JL8696 on the night of June 30, 2025. The Boeing 737-800, en route from Shanghai to Tokyo, was forced to make an emergency landing at Kansai International Airport, Osaka, after the aircraft's systems triggered a warning for a cabin pressure anomaly. In less than 10 minutes, the plane plummeted over 7,000 meters as passengers, many of whom had never experienced an aviation emergency, were gripped by sheer terror. A strange pop was heard. Flight attendants shouted for everyone to don oxygen masks. The lights dimmed, and fear took over the entire cabin. Some passengers were so overwhelmed they began writing farewell messages to loved ones. Fortunately, thanks to the crew's swift and professional response, the aircraft landed safely, averting what could have been a catastrophic outcome. So, what exactly happened on that flight? Where did the warning originate? And why are rare but extremely dangerous cabin depressurization incidents seemingly on the rise? Let's take a closer look at the full sequence of events, the passengers' reactions, the emergency response from the crew, and the critical lessons the aviation industry must learn from this harrowing incident. On the evening of June 30, 2025, a commercial flight from Shanghai to Tokyo, operated by Spring Airlines Japan, was forced to make an emergency landing at Kansai International Airport after the aircraft's system issued a warning of abnormal cabin pressure. Flight JL8696, operated by Spring Airlines Japan under the Japan Airlines code IJ004, departed from Shanghai Pudong International Airport PVG en route to Tokyo Narita NRT. While cruising at an altitude of approximately 11,000 meters, the aircraft's system detected a fault in the cabin pressurization mechanism. The malfunction was identified as potentially leading to a sudden depressurization inside the cabin. Upon detecting the anomaly, the pilot suspected a pressurization failure and immediately issued an emergency alert to air traffic control. The crew then made the decision to divert the aircraft to the nearest available airport to mitigate risks to passengers and crew. Just a few minutes later, at around 6:40 p.m. local time, the aircraft began a rapid descent of roughly 7,000 meters within a span of 10 minutes. During the descent, oxygen masks automatically deployed in front of passengers. The cabin lights dimmed, and the temperature inside rose as the aircraft descended quickly to a safer altitude. Inside the Spring Airlines Japan cabin, many passengers recorded the deployment of the oxygen masks and shared the scenes on social media, capturing the atmosphere of anxiety that had overtaken the cabin. Flight attendants shouted loudly for everyone to put on their oxygen masks immediately. At the same time, the captain announced over the intercom that the plane was conducting an emergency landing in Osaka. According to several passengers, moments before the oxygen masks dropped, they heard a faint popping sound, followed by a rapid loss of altitude. Many on board were terrified. One passenger recalled being on the verge of tears and even composing farewell messages to loved ones, believing the plane was about to crash. Fortunately, approximately 30 minutes after the onset of the emergency, the aircraft landed safely at Kansai International Airport at 8:50 p.m. Emergency crews were on standby on the ground, but fortunately no injuries were reported and no one required medical attention. After landing, all passengers were escorted to the terminal building for health checks. Japan Airlines and Spring Airlines Japan arranged overnight hotel accommodations for those affected. Additionally, the airline offered a compensation payment of 15,000 yen per passenger, equivalent to approximately $93. However, several people on social media noted that the compensation was not automatically distributed. Passengers had to proactively contact the airline to complete the claim process. The reason cited was that the emergency landing occurred at an unscheduled airport, which prevented the automatic processing of compensation as normally handled. Although the flight carried a Japan Airlines flight number, the Boeing 737-800 involved in the incident was actually owned and operated by Spring Airlines Japan, a low-cost subsidiary of Japan Airlines. Japan Airlines holds a controlling stake in Spring Japan, while China-based Spring Airlines owns the remaining 33%. However, Spring Airlines China has clarified that it does not participate in the day-to-day management of its Japanese counterpart. The technical issue on flight JL8696 IJ004 was identified when the aircraft's onboard system issued an abnormal warning related to the cabin pressurization system. According to the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism of Japan, warning lights on the aircraft's control panel indicated a possible malfunction or depressurization event inside the passenger cabin. Initial information from the airline suggested that the cabin pressure may have dropped suddenly below safe levels. In response, the flight crew immediately followed emergency procedures, descending rapidly to a safe altitude of around 3,000 meters to stabilize pressure and ensure breathable air. Oxygen masks were automatically deployed to provide temporary oxygen supply to all passengers and crew members. This timely and procedural response prevented the risk of hypoxia, a dangerous lack of oxygen that can render individuals unconscious within minutes at cruising altitudes. Aviation experts note that prompt access to supplemental oxygen and rapid descent are critical in such scenarios. Currently, Japanese aviation authorities are investigating the root cause of the incident. The Osaka Aviation Office has initiated a detailed inspection of the aircraft, including flight data analysis and pressurization system diagnostics. As of July 1st, no official technical conclusion has been released. A certificate issued by Spring Japan stated the flight was canceled due to a technical issue, and the airline has pledged to provide updates once the investigation is complete. Although rare, cabin depressurization events have occurred before. Potential causes include sensor malfunctions, pressurization valve failures, or fuselage leaks. Standard aviation protocols dictate that oxygen masks automatically deploy in response to dangerous pressure drops, and pilots must descend rapidly to ensure cabin safety. On the Spring Airlines Japan flight, the sudden loss of cabin pressure plunged all passengers into an unprecedented and terrifying ordeal. Immediately after the incident, many passengers took to social media to share photos and describe their emotions. The images showed oxygen masks simultaneously dropping from the overhead panels, dangling in front of passengers, a clear visual of the mid-air emergency. One passenger recalled hearing a loud bang, and just seconds later, the oxygen masks dropped from the compartments above. Flight attendants, clearly alarmed, shouted at passengers to quickly put on their oxygen masks. At the same time, the cabin lights dimmed, and the air inside grew hot and suffocating, intensifying the sense of panic. According to multiple accounts, the aircraft began a rapid emergency descent, giving many the sensation of free fall. Some passengers felt weightless, lifted off their seats, while the sudden change in pressure caused intense pain in their ears and a sense of dizziness. One individual said they even wrote farewell messages to loved ones, preparing for the worst. Another passenger shared that while their body remained seated in the aircraft, their mind could no longer keep up with reality, as if drifting between life and death. Some trembled uncontrollably, others sobbed aloud, and the cabin was filled with screams, cries, and overwhelming fear. The plane dropped from an altitude of over 10,000 meters to around 3,000 meters in just 20 minutes. One passenger described it as a life-threatening plunge, fast, intense, and utterly unexpected. Amid the chaos, the cabin crew managed to remain calm. Flight attendants moved swiftly through the aisles, helping passengers secure their oxygen masks properly, fasten seatbelts, and stay seated. At the same time, the public address system broadcast repeated announcements to reassure passengers and affirm that the flight crew was in full control of the situation. After approximately 10 to 15 minutes of emergency descent, the captain announced that the cabin had stabilized and passengers could now remove their oxygen masks. However, the psychological tension was far from over. The Boeing 737 landed safely at Kansai Airport, but passengers were not allowed to disembark immediately. Everyone had to remain seated in the dimly lit cabin for over 1 hour, while ground technicians conducted a thorough inspection of the aircraft following the pressurization incident. This was done in accordance with standard safety procedures, ensuring the plane posed no further risks before allowing passengers to exit. The prolonged uncertainty took a psychological toll on many. even though no physical injuries were reported. Just weeks before the Japan incident, Delta Airlines Flight 1576 also experienced a sudden cabin depressurization on June 9, 2025. The Boeing 757-200, carrying 200 passengers and 6 crew members, was en route from Atlanta to Orlando when passengers noticed an unusual rise in cabin temperature. Moments later, oxygen masks dropped unexpectedly from overhead compartments, triggering panic on board. Flight attendants announced an emergency as the aircraft rapidly descended and diverted to Cecil Airport in Jacksonville, Florida, a facility not typically used for commercial flights. Some passengers reported haze and a stifling atmosphere, but Delta later confirmed there were no signs of fire or explosion. The haze was likely mist or dust stirred by the sudden pressure drop. Peter Stewart, a seasoned traveler with 40 years of flying experience, called it the most frightening flight of his life. He recalled the eerie silence as the plane dropped and sent a message to his family saying, "I love you," just before Wi-Fi cut out. Many passengers were visibly praying and bracing for impact. Despite the chaos, the flight crew remained calm and professional. Stewart praised the pilot's precise control during descent, describing the maneuvering as military level. The plane landed safely around 2 p.m., and all 206 on board were evacuated without injury. Passengers applauded in relief as the aircraft came to a halt. The FAA confirmed the crew declared an emergency due to cabin depressurization and has launched an investigation. Delta apologized to all affected passengers and emphasized that safety remains its top priority. The airline provided ground transport back to Jacksonville International Airport and arranged travel to Orlando to complete the journey. Thanks to the crew's composed response and training, the emergency concluded safely. Aviation experts commended their handling, noting that quick actions and experience likely prevented a tragedy. The back-to-back incidents in Japan and the US highlight the vital importance of cabin pressurization safety in modern aviation. While today's aircraft systems are highly reliable, technical failures, from faulty sensors to structural leaks, can still occur. Fortunately, in both cases, emergency procedures were executed swiftly and correctly. Pilots performed rapid descents, oxygen masks deployed as designed, and crews coordinated with air traffic control to ensure safe landings. These prompt actions, supported by rigorous training, helped prevent casualties. Ongoing investigations by Japanese and US authorities aim to identify the root causes and guide improvements in aircraft systems and safety protocols. Their findings will be key to reducing the risk of such events in the future. As air travel rebounds post-pandemic, these incidents are a timely reminder that safety must always come first. Transparency about which carrier operates a flight also remains essential to maintaining passenger trust.